I'm Pia Hontiveros. This is a Politics as Usual special here at the Batasang Pambansa, the home of the House of Representatives, where President Rodrigo Duterte delivers his fourth State of the Nation address on Monday to open the 18th Congress. It's a significant time for his administration, coming off from midterm elections where his chosen senatorial candidates very handily beat the opposition in a complete shutout. Still and all, the State of the Nation address, the SONA, goes by plenty of tradition and protocol, even as we all know how things turned out last year, or more correctly, didn't turn out. The SONA delayed by more than an hour because of the chaos of a coup d'etat to unseat Pantaleon Alvarez and install Gloria Arroyo as House Speaker. Shortly before 4 in the afternoon of every fourth Monday of July, a date that's set in the Constitution, the 1987 Constitution that is, a helicopter carrying the president will land on this helipad. Or sometimes, as in the past, he or she arrives by car. But that was long before anti-SONA rallies along Commonwealth Avenue and Batasan Road became the norm. So the president will take a chopper from which he disembarks. And as is tradition and protocol, the president is welcomed by the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, General Benjamin Madrigal, and the sergeants at arms of both the Senate and the House of Representatives. General Madrigal, who, by the way, retires in September, escorts the president through and as he reviews the honor guard. And at the end of this honor guard formation, the Senate President, for now it's Tito Soto, and the House Speaker will be waiting for the president. And who might that House Speaker be? Well, that depends on who's going to emerge victorious in what's expected to be a bruising fight, in spite of the fact that President Duterte suggested that Alan P. Cayetano and Lord Alan Velasco share a 3-year term between them. This arrival scenario here in what's called the rear entrance is symbolic because the executive, represented by the president and the chief of staff, and the legislative, represented by the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, and their respective sergeants at arms, are both co-equal and independent branches of government. The President is also met by a phalanx of lawmakers, many of them eager to greet him or whisper a thing or two, or at the very least, be seen with him. From here, the President is brought to a holding area. He's ushered into what used to be the Presidential Legislative Liaison Office. The president stays here for a little bit of chit-chat and a meeting with the Senate President and House Speaker and other leaders. Now, you all remember last year's little chit-chat turned into a 1-hour wait because of the chaos that morning when Gloria Arroyo unseated Bebot Alvarez. But let's say that chit-chat at the holding room is over. The Senate President and the House Speaker proceed to the session hall where they will declare the joint session of Congress open with a bang of their gavels. Both the Senate mace and the House mace, symbols of authority, are put on display at the foot of the rostrum. The Senate President and the House Speaker will announce the President is waiting to deliver his SONA, and he will be invited to join them. Now that's when the President will emerge from this holding room, walks through the North Lounge, through this hallway, and all the way towards the main lobby, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. The President will then turn left into the plenary hall, goes through these doors, walks down the center aisle, and up the rostrum. The national anthem is played, prayers are said, and the SONA begins at the appointed hour of 4 in the afternoon every fourth Monday of July before a joint session of Congress. This year, the SONA opens the 18th Congress. The only other time a joint session of Congress happens is when the Senate and the House convene to canvass the votes for President and Vice President in a national election. But they don't sit as lawmakers, but as what's known as the National Board of Canvassers. Of course, the other rare, very rare occurrence in July of 2017 when Congress extended martial law in Mindanao because of Marawi. Now, what is a State of the Nation address? Years ago, a newspaper columnist described the SONA as political theater. It's a speech that sets direction and vision, but it's a lot about performance and projection, soaring rhetoric, catchy phrases, human props such as Gloria Arroyo's Bangkang Papel Boys in 2001. That's called a Lenny Skutnik, by the way. A SONA puts the wind in the nation's sails. It's meant to tell us where the president wants to take us. Us, meaning his audience, the audience outside the Batasan and the audience inside the Batasan. And now that we've mentioned the audience, who's going to be here? Lawmakers, of course, because the Constitution says the president must address Congress. Both houses of Congress, senators, including the 12 who've been newly elected, and of course the members of the House of Representatives. Former presidents who as former heads of state are invited. There are only 3 reasons why a former president would not be here: if he or she has passed away or is gravely ill, if he or she is in detention, as was the practice beginning when Gloria Arroyo was president and Joseph Estrada was in detention, which also happened to Arroyo when Noynoy Aquino was president, or if they're not on very good terms with the incumbent. For Mr. Duterte's third SONA last year, Fidel Ramos, Joseph Estrada, and Gloria Arroyo, who was released from hospital detention when Duterte became president, were here. Noynoy Aquino did not attend. From the executive, the vice president will be here, although she and the president still aren't exactly the best of friends. From the judicial branch of government, Chief Justice Lucas Bersamin, who retires in October, is expected to attend. Members of the diplomatic corps, but it won't be the dean of the diplomatic corps, the papal nuncio, the Vatican's representative here, on whom the spotlight will be, but on 2 ambassadors. Song Kim of the United States, who's about to end his tour of duty, and the ambassador of China, Zhao Zhanhua. The U.S. has been all but relegated to the background now that President Duterte has made no secret of his preference for China. But let's go back to the executive, the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, General Benjamin Madrigal, and the Chief of the Philippine National Police, General Oscar Albayalde, who, like Madrigal, retires later this year. Also expected to be here, members of the president's official family, members of his cabinet and advisors. Among the more prominent ones, of course, apart from the executive secretary, Salvador Bingbong Medialdea, the president's former special assistant and now Senator Bongo, who despite his new role still spends a lot of time with the president, and Mr. Duterte's family. So let's talk about this building. It was built in 1978 by former First Lady Imelda Marcos to house what her late husband, former President Ferdinand Marcos, called the interim Batasang Pambansa. Now, the year 1978 is significant. This was just about 6 years after declaring martial law and dissolving Congress, throwing many of its members in jail. Today, though, a Marcos daughter, Amy, is attending the SONA as a newly elected senator. After EDSA in 1986, democratic institutions such as a bicameral legislature were restored with the 1987 Constitution. While the Senate occupied at first the old Senate building, which is now the National Museum, and then moved to its present location, rented space in the GSIS building in Pasay in the late 1990s, and will soon have a new building in Taguig, the new post-Marcos House of Representatives occupied the Batasang Pambansa, where every president after Marcos and since Cory Aquino has delivered his or her State of the Nation address. Cory Aquino delivered 5 SONAs here. Her first one spoke about democracy restored, the price and challenges to preserve it, and the latter SONAs, her aversion to staying in power longer than what the 1987 Constitution prescribed. Fidel Ramos delivered 6 SONAs here. Joseph Estrada delivered only 3 throughout his abbreviated term as president, but he was the first president to allow militant groups to enter the Batasang complex during his first SONA in 1998, even stepping outside the building to meet them. Gloria Arroyo delivered 9 SONAs here because she served out the last half of Estrada's term and then ran in 2004 to win a fresh 6-year term. Arroyo is best known for her 2001 SONA, where she used human props, and for the SONA of 2005, where she steered clear of the most serious threat to her presidency, allegations that she manipulated the vote in 2004. Noynoy Aquino delivered 6 SONAs here, most of the time critical of his predecessor, and Rodrigo Duterte about to deliver his 4th SONA. Now let's go even further back in history. Every president since Manuel L. Quezon has delivered a State of the Nation address, whether it was known by other names, delivered in months other than July, and in places other than the Batasan. What did the president talk about? We can't really be sure until the speech itself. The only thing for sure is that the president is most unpredictable. But prepared script or not, the president is known anyway to veer off script and deliver extemporaneous remarks. Last year, however, he stuck to the script and spoke for only 48 minutes. We can surmise and rightly guess he will go to great lengths to talk about drugs, crime, corruption, and take on anyone who dares to cross him. People or groups that have criticized him. He's sure to talk about foreign relations, so there will be talk about China, the West Philippine Sea, the country's exclusive economic zone, and the United States. Sulu and terrorism, Mindanao and martial law. The rest, let's put it in question form. Is the president likely to talk about charter change, federalism, the economy, and build? Is he likely to mention the elections, where his candidates did so well, it was a shutout of the opposition? An extremely popular president coming off an overwhelming election victory. So we can say, given his penchant for delivering speeches that can make you literally fall off your chair, he's not going to disappoint, is he? I've covered every State of the Nation address since 1994, and well, it is, hands down, Rodrigo Duterte who does deliver the most exciting ones. Welcome back to this special edition on the State of the Nation address. This is Politics as Usual. I'm Pia Hontiveros. Joining me now are analysts Manolo Quezon and Ed Tayaw. Manolo and Ed, thank you very much for being here. Let's begin with, the president going to speak in his fourth SONA. He's coming off, a very successful election, at least for the Senate, the senatorial race. His candidates won very handily. In the local race, medyo may konting mga problema. But be that as it may, how do you see how he's going to talk about it? Is he going to talk about it? Is he going to use it in the SONA on Monday?
You know, a lot of it will depend, I guess, on the sort of, to use a really corny word, the vibes the president gets at the rostrum when he mounts the rostrum. Because, you know, he's keenly aware that he has an even bigger crowd outside the hall of Congress, a hall he has never been particularly kind to. And the thing is, he's going into this SONA after the humiliation of the previous one, where, you know, it was supposed to be his moment,
right.
and things didn't go quite that way.
Yeah, the chaos in the morning.
But from that low point to getting one of the biggest midterm sweeps we've ever had. So his problem now is he has a huge coalition that is, you know, the bigger it is, the harder to move.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to be waiting for the signs. Now, he will make the signs about the things that he and no one else thinks is important, because we've seen this in his previous SONAs. They can give him any draft they want. He will, you know, do the editing right there and tear the whole thing up if he feels like it.
Yeah.
They said it would be short, and it may or may not be, but people will be looking for things about China, about the Constitution, about future taxes, about infrastructure, and so on. But you may or may not get any of these things depending on what the president's antenna is telling him to.
Yeah, at that very moment.
At that very moment.
Like you said, the vibes that he's going to get just as he's about to speak at the rostrum. And interesting what you say, no? It's not just the vibes or you know, yung pakiramdam niya sa loob ng session hall ng Batasan, but from outside, the audience outside. He's
Yes.
playing to he's
Remember-
playing to an entire gallery.
Remember,
right?
he had gone out in a thing we hadn't seen for a long time. He had actually joined the left.
Yeah. Right.
Once
Although
upon
Erap
a
did
time
that. Erap did that in 98.
Yes, but
yes.
it was a generation in between.
Yeah, right.
So he had done that. Now they're his enemy. And part of the remaining conditional support of the armed forces is the continued persecution of the left. So how does he balance that?
Yeah.
And again, what is going to be the atmosphere in the House? People like Professor Tayo will probably know better than us what might happen, because if there's a speaker he anoints, then he's relaxed.
Yeah.
If by some miracle it's not a speaker he anointed, you don't know how it will affect.
Yeah, well, the speaker he anointed, well, two of them, no, in a term-sharing deal, at least according to that announcement he made, dapat the first 15 months daw si Alan Cayetano, hindi ba, Ed? And then 21 months na susunod si Lord Alan Velasco naman. Interestingly enough, a day or two after that, Sal Panelo comes out and says, but you know, that's a suggestion, no? what's happening on the ground? Is that what we're going to see on Monday, 10 a.m., July 22, here at the Batasan? Is Alan Cayetano going to be elected Speaker of the House?
Well, there are some people who are saying there might be a surprise this coming Monday. No?
Yeah.
I don't
so
know
someone's
how
going to
exactly.
pull the rug from under someone's feet, ganon?
Something like that. In other words, it's still a race, which is quite interesting because it's the first time that, towards the start of new Congress, you still don't have a speaker.
Right.
Before the election ends, you know already who's the speaker.
Yeah, right. Alam mo na kung sino yung
Alam mo
dalawang
na.
tatakbo para yung isa mag-speaker, yung isa magma-minority.
That's
di ba?
right.
Oo.
Actually, maraming unique na nangyari before. For example, yung minority leader, di man yata minority talaga yun.
Company.
It's quite, interesting how it's going to play out this time. But going back to the president, I think the endorsement was quite, for lack of a better term, no, it's not much of a choice for him. Kasi ang original statement niya, he doesn't want to endorse anyone. It wasn't really much of a choice because if you're president or if you're the leader of the party and you know that everyone there, almost everyone there in Congress anyway, is your ally or has pledged, allegiance or loyalty or whatever to you, you don't want to be making a choice. Kasi baka magtampo pa yung iba dyan, mawala
Sasama
pa sa'yo,
sasama
pa yung loob. No?
Yeah.
In fact, this is also the narrative why you have the hugpong there. The administration party may have, been lacking in keeping the original members in the same fold. So you have to offer an alternative space for all those who wants to support but are not necessarily supportive of some of the members in the political party. So that's what happened.
Yeah, pero interesting lang yung tatlong kandidato for speaker before the announcement was made. Yung isa PDP laban, yung isa NP, yung isa lakas, no? Bahagi sila lahat naman ng supermajority, no? Pero
but that's what you get when your majority is super. It's also super hard to control. And
para bang Rainbow Coalition or
yes, but remember, even when we had the Rainbow Coalition, De Venecia had a particular gift for making everyone masahe.
He fixed everything. Right?
I don't know about Romualdez, but certainly Velasco and Cayetano are not charmers.
Tsaka madali
Not charmers.
Not among our political class. No.
Not charmers, in spite of the fact that they are politicians, that...
No, I mean, politicians are funny creatures because the thing is you cannot be... I mean, there's certain things working here. Number one is the House is always with the president, whoever the president is. But part of it is that the president has a say in who the speaker is. I mean, what Sal Panelo, for example, when you quoted him, was doing was trying to preserve that sort of appearance that, syempre, hindi kami kasama dito. Kasi,
hindi kami nanghimasok,
but too late. The president broke the taboo. But he broke the taboo because people were really
forcing him to step in.
To weigh in because, remember...
Who was forcing him to step in?
Well, ang daming grupo naman doon sa loob But of course, definitely, someone very close to the president may have had a hand.
By the name of?
Bongo. No, because
supporting who? Supporting which candidate?
Well, probably supporting both camps. No, you have to find a way na hindi mo ang tawag dito, hindi magtampo yung kabila eh.
Yeah.
I mean, there were obviously three factions because there were three candidates.
Yeah.
You could see that, the GMA bloc and so on were with Romualdez. Romualdez represents the thoroughbreds, so to speak. If he becomes speaker, he will be the second speaker Romualdez, endorsed by the second president Macapagal, and so on down the line, right? So he's the sort of business as usual. We know what we're doing. We'll keep things stable. Lord Alan Velasco
is an unknown,
is an unknown representing all the unknowns who are now suddenly wealthy and elected and powerful, right? So they have their own block. Alan Peter represents, and you'll always find this faction in every administration, the originals. There's always the group of, hey, we were there when no one thought you were going to win. What about us? Guy. But and also the candidate of the cabinet. Let's not forget that the economic team held a briefing for neophyte congressmen for the Cayetano candidacy, and that's where Bongo comes in.
Okay. And of
So-
course, And of course, Alan was known as one of the bright boys. This was
Yes,
early
but-
2000s. I mean,
Like
matagal na
we
rin
said
siyang
earlier,
Congress,
he's
pero-
never been liked by his peers.
Never been liked by his peers.
I mean,
Yeah,
you'll
okay.
find this in the Senate and so on.
So what is the scenario on Monday?
Well, all the while I thought it's already settled, no?
Yeah.
But the past few days, may mga reports na may mga meeting dito na maraming umattend, and there was even a Thanksgiving that happened, no, attended by the former speaker, former president of GMA. And so, given that kind of information, you're inclined to think na iba yung pwedeng mangyari by Monday. In fact, they're even talking about who's going to nominate who. So, at the end, you know...
So who's going to be nominated?
Well,
Alan Cayetano and Lord Alan Velasco?
No, Martin Romualdez and Alan Cayetano.
Martin and Alan.
Yeah, I think it's just a toss-up between the two now. So Lord Alan Velasco is no longer in
but if kung
list of
ina-nominate
choices.
si Martin and si Lord Alan, yung matatalo yun ang magiging minority?
If you go by the original rules.
Because those are the rules of the House, di ba?
If you go by the original rules. But
Oo, di ang gulo. Yeah, because
No,
I mean, like last...
let's be clear, it would again be unprecedented because the president has made his choice.
Yeah.
If the House goes out and makes a different choice,
Then what will that make him out to be?
the president then has to compete with the idea that he's an instant lame duck. You imagine the difference between the day before that, when he is one of the strongest presidents we've ever had in terms of popular support and
The
political
numbers are
support,
so good. Right.
to his own people turned their back on him
Not following,
and
yeah.
elected someone else. Of course, people will try to smooth it over, but it is as damaging to the president as the loss of the speakership was last year.
Pero meron tayong din nalilimutan. If we think that the Senate leadership is already final, pwede pa din magbago yun. May not be this Monday, but I'm expecting it to happen very soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, the being lame duck is of course always expected in the halfway, no? But we'll see exactly how the president is going to deliver the message, no? As mentioned by Sec Manolo earlier, no? Depende sa vibe niya eh.
Yeah.
And makikita mo ito kung babasahin niya entirely yung kanyang prepared
Yung
speech.
prepared speech.
Because the president
Pero-
is always known to, go out of script and spontaneous yung kanyang remarks.
However, just going back very briefly, if the congressmen do not follow the script on Monday morning, script meaning what was announced by President Duterte
You really have a
week and
dilemma
half ago, there'll be a dilemma, and it will overshadow his SONA.
Yes,
Di ba? Kasi yun ang magiging big story of the day.
Precisely
Right?
what you're trying to avoid, of a break in the so-called majority, is going to happen if it's not managed well, in the sense that, okay, you don't want to agree that you will be speaker, whether term sharing or what have you. So, mapipilitan ka, magmaminority ka ngayon.
So talagang malaking gulo yan. Things will be literally out of control.
Yeah.
Well, it will be, but it may not be. And let me explain why. Let's go back to why did GMA end up speaker out of the blue when Pantaleon Alvarez was the president's chosen man. If you want to boil it down to a nutshell, it was the idea that they needed an adult in charge. We forget that aside from the president's ability to hold the popularity and the trust of the public, it's not necessarily the most efficient or experienced government. So at the very least in Congress, they needed someone who was more liable to know the rules and operate by them than Alvarez, who was getting a bit too,
Yeah.
If let's say you have a speaker, Romualdez, it's the same message. So business may like it. The broader
it'll
political
project
group,
it'll project stability?
For example, it probably means that a speaker, Romualdez, would have to declare loyalty to the president. That he owes him that much, and so chances of an impeachment or any other sort of thing are probably less because a speaker. Any other speaker may not have been able to control the House, which is also giving people some.
Although it can
problems.
project two things, that the Marcoses and Arroyos are back. Di ba?
Well,
But
they have been.
anyway, well, interesting because we're supposed to be talking really about the president, SONA, and yet, and again, I think this is like an indication of what's going to happen Monday morning because completely overshadowed. So let's try and, I don't know, in the last minute or so, what is it that we expect that President Duterte will be talking about? I mean, well, lately, there's been a lot of talk about the war on drugs, foreign policy, China, the UNHRC, terrorism.
Most likely he will start with those issues right then and there because, the president is very emotional as a president. We've seen him speak out of, how he feels exactly at any given time. So I'm sure Iceland will be mentioned. I'm sure UNHCR will be mentioned, and so many other.
Yung Iceland, is he going to say, let's cut diplomatic ties? No, let's not, because
Hindi ko masabi kasi
Hindi
iba
natin
yung sinasabi
masabi.
nung isa, iba yung sinasabi nung isa. So,
unpredictable.
Yeah.
Okay. Manolo.
Montulfo was predicting some time back that there was going to be a broad reorganization of the executive department. It hasn't happened. So that may be a surprise, and it would be a very good surprise from the president's point of view if he were to announce that and fire people right and left and promote other people, because people like that. Everything else, I think, is going to be calculated on what did the last survey say. What are they worried of? For example, the armed forces is a continuing concern because of unease with the China policy. So how is the president addressing that beyond appointing retired generals all over the place?
Well, maybe that's also why he all out of the blue invoked the Mutual Defense Treaty.
Well, no, that's just his way to go like that at people because no one's going to take that.
No one took it seriously.
No one's going to take it seriously, but it's fun, and that's for the peanut gallery to applaud. And that's why he's at 85%.
Okay. And my last question is, so who's going to be speaker?
Could be Martin.
Meron ka pang could be.
Kasi iba pa din yung sinabi ng presidente. So, depende pa din kung paano sila susunod doon sa endorsement.
All right. And Manolo?
Well, I think it's going to be whether they stick to a short SONA. If it becomes longer and longer, then you know that something was bothering the president, and it will be on full display how he sort of works that through in trying to communicate it to the public.
And can you tell us what's your forecast? Who's going to be speaker?
I actually, I'm just going to take the contrary opinion because if Cayetano doesn't get it, you're going to have a lot of sleepless nights in the palace moving forward. And it's going to make it a very rocky remainder of the term.
And my one last, in the last 30 seconds, John Nery has said this years ago, SONA is political theater. And that's exactly what we're going to see on Monday, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and like you said, playing to, addressing the audience, playing to a gallery, etc. Thank you very much to our guests in this portion of the episode on the State of the Nation address, Manolo Quezon and Ed Tayaw. Maraming salamat. Thank you for being here. Politics as usual. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special edition of Politics as Usual. We are at the Batasang Pambansa. Joining me now, our senior correspondents, Ina Andolong, David Santos, and Cian Arcangel. Guys, thank you very much for being here. We're going to talk about the SONA on Monday, what the president is, you expect him to say, and also, of course, how the story on the race for the speakership is going. But before that, I wanted to ask you, if you were to look back at the last 12 months, from July 2018 to July 2019, how would you describe that period? And I'm not going to say one word, that would be unfair to you. So let's start with Ina.
Yeah, it's difficult to come up with a word, with one word to describe the past year. But what I can say for sure is that we're talking about the same things practically. It's been a long year of the same discussions on the same big issues. What I'm saying is, at this time last year, before the president delivered his SONA in 2018, there was a big issue, controversy involving China. There was a similar incident, yung Filipino fishermen being harassed by Chinese fishermen. And now a year later, we're talking about the same thing, only happening in a different area, specifically Recto Bank. Also last year, the talks on the drug war were still the same. And right now, we're at the same situation, highlighted even more United
international
Nations.
attention.
Yes,
ano?
yes. So
So
basically,
parang here we go again.
it's the same thing, long discussion, and I really don't see it ending pa rin anytime soon. I do expect this still to haunt the president perhaps until the end of his term.
Haunt?
And, haunt.
Well, that's strong.
Mali yung haunt. To face.
Bond.
Continue to be discussed until the end of the president's term, and likely still to be discussed in his SONA on Monday.
Okay, David, that overview of yours muna of the last 12 months.
It's a crazy year
Crazy.
in good and bad
Good and
ways.
bad,
No?
yeah.
Bad in a sense na parang this administration faced a lot of challenges, including in terms of security. We've seen what had happened in the recent Sulu bombing, the threat of violent extremism. Also, there's so much question on how the government responded to the Recto Bank incident. Good in a sense that it also reached unprecedented highs. We had the Bangsamoro Organic Law, the Bangsamoro government now set up in Mindanao. There's so much optimism that somehow it could bring peace and development in the South. So I think a good balance of craziness, positive and negative ways siguro.
Ganda ng term na binili mo, crazy. Spelled C-R-A-Z-Y. Sian, your overview muna of the last 12 years. 12 months, sorry.
Yeah, so I think there's a continuing tug of war for power in Congress because we know that the 17th Congress started with Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, former President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo.
Or the last year of the 17th Congress.
Yes, taking over from then Speaker Pantaleon Alvarez. And that power struggle continued and affected the passage of the 2019 national budget because it was delayed for about 3 to 4 months, and that affected the economy. And now we have the speakership race that is still, there could be a lot of surprises that could affect the choice of the speaker.
So Sian, you have looked into your crystal ball, and also after hearing what Ed Tayao and Manolo Quezon were saying, hindi pala tayo sigurado na si Alan Cayetano ang speaker.
Yes, there's Alan Cayetano is the perceived speaker, but a lot of surprises could still happen on the day of the SONA, and the siblings, actually the Duterte siblings could say something. It's actually notable that Mayor Sara Duterte is still silent up till now about the choice of Alan Cayetano as the first speaker in the term sharing agreement. And
because she wanted Lord Alan Velasco and not for a term sharing agreement, right?
Yes.
What is it about Sara and Lord Alan? Why were they so close? What did they work on together?
Lord Alan Velasco said that he became close to Sara Duterte while they were campaigning together for hugpong ng pagbabago candidates. They were going around the country in sorties, and Lord Alan Velasco was almost always the MC in these sorties, and he said that it was during those times that they were together that they became close. But even before then, the Velasco family was already kind of close to the Dutertes. Remember that in 2016, President Duterte spent Christmas Day in Davao City having lunch with the Velasco couple.
Okay, the Velasco couple, bale yung tatay ni Lord Alan is former Justice Presbyterio Velasco,
yes,
right? And but as a congressman, how did Lord Alan Velasco distinguish himself? What did he do here in Congress, in the 17th Congress?
Well, he used the...
Because all of a sudden he's candidate for speaker. So usually pag ganyan, pag kandidato ka for speaker, meron kang talagang malaking ginawa, no? So ano yun?
Well, he's the chair of the House Energy Committee in the 17th Congress, and he worked for the passage of the Murang Kuryente bill, which aims to reduce the power rates in the country. But really,
we
in the 17th Congress, he's not
we
really...
didn't hear very much of him. Kanina nga nung usapan namin ni Ed and Manolo, the term that was used for him was a relative unknown, di ba?
Yes. He's not really that vocal, or he doesn't really distinguish himself when it comes to issues. And actually, even after his name was cropping up in the speakership race, he's not really known to make himself easily available to the media for interviews and statements.
Or maybe yun ang ginagamit niyang alas na tumahimik lang siya, ganun ba yun? And then biglang bulaga, eto na siya, he's a candidate for speaker. So, who might be speaker on Monday? Can you make a guess? Or you'd rather not? You have this look on your face na parang, don't make me do this.
It's going to be an interesting voting for the speaker because you have the president endorsing Alan Cayetano, but
for the first 15 months.
Yes, for the first 15 months, but you know that a lot of surprises can still happen.
In other words,
especially after what we saw last year.
Well, what else? Para bang ano eh? No, actually, I'm expecting na magkakagulo naman talaga sa Monday, no? So it's just a matter of what exactly is going to happen. Pero naisip ko lang,
the Presidential Sun would hint or float the idea of a possible coup at the House of
if there wasn't
Representatives.
something going on.
So,
There's something happening on the ground kasi. Tapos naisip ko lang na ang ibig lang sabihin nito is that si Sian Arcangel ang top story. The House Speakership raw, hindi naman unsettled, pero medyo siguro magiging quite interesting and bloody. But anyway, okay. Well, let's go through quickly, no. Nung 2018 kasi SONA, di ba, may sinabi si President Duterte, no, the drug war will be chilling, relentless. No, how is he going to talk about it again this time around? You know, like you already mentioned, the UNHRC resolution, Iceland, etc. How's he going to bring it up?
Well, first of all, the drug war is something he talks about every year in his SONA. And again, we do obviously expect him to talk about this on Monday. But the newer development, as we know, is the international attention again on the drug war. There's the Iceland resolution filed before the UN. The UN now, because of that, possibly conducting a probe on the alleged human rights violations here. We won't be surprised if the president would take that chance to address all these issues. And also, perhaps, I don't know, if he may talk about Iceland, which recently he said,
because he's supposed to make a decision, right? Because
he's supposed to make a decision, but yung last statement niya, he also said, he's being careful about it, considering the 2,000 Filipinos in
But for me, more interesting kasi yung sinasabi niya, well, hindi lang siya, no, spokesman niya, different people representing the administration, na parang, in so many words, ay naku, wag natin pansinin ang UNHRC. Pwede ba yun? David, can you take that?
Well, we being part of this organization, I don't think that basta lang that we can just set it aside. I mean, it's something that we should also really look into. I mean, although they have been, we remember Senator Amy Marcos even suggesting that we cut ties with Iceland, all this, and then the DFA secretary reiterating that no international ties will be cut, including with the UNCHR.
I think the basis of Malacanang, kumbaga they believe they can say those things, perhaps, is because they have the usual line that the international community, independent foreign policy natin, the international community cannot simply step in and meddle in our affairs.
Hindi ako magpapautos sa dayuhan.
And specifically on the UN, it's not exactly a trial court, right? As opposed to the ICC, which we've already pulled out from. If you study the Iceland resolution, for example, there's really no talk of an investigation there that would entail them interrogating officials involved in the drug war. There's no trial being talked about there. So I think in terms of enforcement, yun yung sinasabi ng Palasyo, they don't see that any probe might actually do something. Parang it's still up to every individual country if they want to impose sanctions on the Philippines.
Also, di ba, si Presidente, no, the way he talks, very, very forceful. He can be emotional at times, and he really says what's exactly on his mind. And the way he talks, parang ang audience niya, hindi lang yung mga nandito sa loob ng session hall, ano? Parang yung audience niya, yung mga tao sa labas, the gallery outside, the audience outside the Batasan, an audience that, by the way, has has proven time and again that they think he's doing well.
Latest Pulse Asia survey, he has a 85% trust and approval ratings, and no doubt the Malacanang is using these survey results to defend the president's controversial decisions. This has been their line, especially recently with the row with China. They've been saying that despite all the criticisms on how the president is towards China, they're going back to surveys. 85% of Filipinos now say they trust and approve of what the president is doing, and he's been able to maintain that level of trust ratings. Last June, he was at 88%, so just really a slight decline lang there.
And I guess, David, we can say now that the president, with those numbers, he has the support of the people, majority, when it comes to the war on terrorism. And we've had, kind of medyo, it's taken an ugly turn. We had that bombing of the Halo Cathedral, the suicide attack na Filipino national pang involved.
Right. Just like the drug war and many other priorities itong government, bringing peace to Mindanao is one of his top priorities. Remember, he is from Mindanao and he is the first president from Mindanao. Kaya ang kanyang talagang ini-insist sa cabinet, sa kanyang security and defense officials that we must be able, at least by the time he steps down, there is significant peace in Mindanao. That's why with this problem now with terrorism that has evolved into violent extremism, with suicide bombing, because suicide bombing, we've never heard about this before until this year, yung Halo Cathedral, as you mentioned, at saka yung recently. But otherwise, yung problema ng terrorism has been a problem by many other administrations as early as the 1990s. This building where we are now became, as you know, a target of a vicious terror attack also in 2007. So there is also the issue about martial law. Will it be extended again for the end time? I mean, pang ilan na ba? For the second time?
But for the third time na ata, no? December 31, 2019.
December 31 mag-expire. But what the defense officials are saying, baka possible the congressmen, lawmakers can look into the 2007 National Security, Human Security Act, na sana baka we can strengthen our anti-terror laws. They have some questions about its provisions instead of continuously extending martial law.
Yeah, so he has the AFP and the PNP support in this regard, the war on terrorism. What about the communist insurgency? I mean, interestingly enough, Manolo and Ed earlier were pointing out na last year, kaalyado niya ang kaliwa. This year, hindi na, di ba?
I think it's part of this, itong package, if I may call a package, to bring peace not only in Mindanao but in many parts of the country. Kasi you cannot bring peace in Mindanao especially, where there's still significant presence of the communist movement if you are not able to address this particular organization. So I guess if you've noticed, Pia, there is unprecedented effort on the part of the AFP to be able to quell, address all issues hounding, particularly the problem on communism. There's aside from the military action, there are efforts to make them surrender. There are efforts to call them persona non grata in communities, in a way to urge the communities to turn
to
their
squeal
back,
on them.
to squeal on them.
Yeah.
So just imagine, you have never seen. Ako personally, I've been covering the defense. I've never seen so much effort being poured into against communism very quietly, pero it is working.
And the AFP and the PNP kasi knows na the president is on their side.
Yes,
he's made that very clear.
Well, pag upo pa lang niya, sinong pinuntahan niya kaagad nung binisita sa mga kampo, hindi ang AFP. Sinong tinaasan niya ng sweldo? At sinong nakaupo ngayon sa mga cabinet? Different, significant, I mean, very important cabinet positions. Di ba mga ex-military men?
Very quickly, I don't know if you can answer this. Late September, pa-retire na si Chief of Staff, no? Jan Madrigal. Sino papalit?
There have been a lot of, as always, Pia, no? Usually mga candidates dyan, yung mga 3-star generals, yung mga nakaupo na sa mga positions ngayon, like the Army Chief and the Major
Alberto,
Service Commands.
Empedrad, Class 86 lahat.
Class 86 lahat. So, siyempre, papasok na rin ang Class 87 and Class 88. They're all holding very significant positions in the AFP. But definitely, it will be someone within Class 86, someone, kasi ang dami pa naman sa kanila ang possible
Oo,
candidate.
matagal pang magre-retire. Oo.
Very traditional AFP. They really follow yung chain of command at saka yung hierarchy, yung seniority especially among the mista sa
Yeah.
PNP.
Oo. At sa PNP, kasi magre-retire na rin si Odi Albayalde sa November or we're not sure exactly when, no?
There are talks in the AFP baka pwedeng si General Alberto ng Army, but he will retire by December, so i-extend ba siya or the President
Or
will
isa pang
appoint...
Class 86 na ang last name ay... Okay.
Well, pwede rin yung current ISMINCOM commander because
Sino yun?
it's
Sino yung
si
ISMINCOM?
General Santos. So he's in Davao. Well, as we all know.
Yun yung Class 86. Yun yung isang kandidato daw eh.
Exactly. So parang there's a running joke na kapag na-assign ka sa Davao, there's a high chance of being ma-appoint sa mga senior.
Alright. Sige, we're gonna wrap up. Like we have a minute. I don't know if you can do this, no? But in the next year, what is President Duterte going to say about what are going to be the priority bills and how is he going to market it to senators and congressmen? Ina?
Well, you're talking about what for the SONA,
priority
right?
legislation, that he will announce.
Well, more recently, he talked about the Department of OFW. He will be certifying it as urgent, according to Senator Bongo. So we do expect that he may talk about that there. Yung sa charter change also, in the last SONA, he specifically even boasted about the draft constitution, and it's been moving quite slowly. So perhaps he
moving slowly or just grinded to a halt.
So we may, many people want to hear about his take on the relatively slow development in that. And also, as he mentioned, he plans to use his SONA to educate his critics. Remember, for critics questioning his recent actions in allowing Chinese fishermen in our exclusive economic zone. So we do expect much of the discussion also. We expect him to talk lengthily about that.
All right, David?
Presidential Peace Advisor Carlito Galvez said the President could spend a significant time speaking about peace in Mindanao, especially in the aftermath of the Sulu bombing. He will also talk about updates on the creation of the Bangsamoro government because this administration sees the Bangsamoro government playing a significant role in not only addressing the threats, but also in helping bring about peace and development, economic development in Mindanao. Also, he's expected to mention about also the continuing war against insurgency because defense officials have been saying if we don't have internal problems, then we can focus on external threats and the threats to our sovereignty. So again, most likely these are some of the security topics that the President would likely talk about in his SONA.
All right, Sian?
So the President has already asked the three contenders for Speaker, that's Alan Cayetano, Lord Velasco, and Martin Romualdez, who will serve as the majority floor leader.
So far?
Yes, so
Unless
far.
siya maging Speaker.
Yes, to pursue charter change. So I think that will be one of the priorities of the House of Representatives. But as to what form that charter change will take, what provisions of the Constitution will be changed, that is still up in the air. But although Congressman Cayetano has said that he wants to extend the term limits of the local government officials, including congressmen. Also, there are some priority bills of the administration that passed the House of Representatives but were not acted on in the Senate, like the mandatory ROTC bill and also the lowering of the minimum age of criminal responsibility. So since those bills already hurdled the House of Representatives, I think that the President will make another push for the passage of these bills for the senators to act on.
All right. Thank you very much, Sian Arcangel, David Santos, and Ina Andolong. Thank you for being with us. And thank you for watching. This has been a Politics as Usual special edition on President Duterte's 4th State of the Nation address that's happening on Monday here at the Batasang Pambansa. I'm Pia Hontiveros.